So I think of Jaime Manrique as part of Trujillo. I think of Erasmo sitting in the room, Guerra. I think of Emmanuel Xavier. There's a lot of, so there's been queer Latino writers working to publish work over the last, for many years, for decades. And then we're kind of part of this current wave. So I want to say two things, right? One is, like, what do you think about what has been done? And what do you think about what is happening now?
I think that a lot of what's been done, again, I think it's really interesting, but I think it's even interesting in sort of like let's analyze this sort of way, is that you both brought up the influence of someone like Chedi Moraga and Latinx LGBTQ as part of like, wow, this was inspirational, this opened up a way for me to look at this as a possibility, but where are those people now? A lot of the writing that's coming out, and not to sort of open up a divide, but a lot of it is very male queer. Where are the queer, you know what I'm saying? Not in that way. What I'm saying is like, in position, there seems to be this predominance, and it's like, how do we open up those channels in order to make it a bit more sort of equitable, and open up that access so that, there are more queer female writers that are getting more exposure. Like, how do we hear that? Like, where's the From Macho to Mariposa for women?
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
Something I guess we're going to have to...
Well, I think that, and I mean, interestingly, I mean, Cherie and Gloria, like, that was a revolutionary anthology. This Bridge Called My Back, there was nothing that had come out like that before. They really paved the way, and that same year, I believe, Cherie's book came out, Loving in the Warriors. So that same year, those two books came out, and it was revolutionary because it was, and that was taking it from a feminist perspective. I mean, they put in the queer perspective. That was coming from a feminist perspective of like not being comfortable with what the white feminist world was doing. Right. And I think for a really long time there were not many, the queer male voices, especially Latino voices, were not there. And for so long it was dominated by women. And I think that there are something. I mean, there is a need for that equity. There is a need. I mean, what was it last year? There was all of a sudden, there was From Macho to Mariposa and Ambientes that came out in 1 year, which was like the first time that had happened in, 13 years? That you had a gay male Latino anthology. Right, in 1999, that was the first time it had happened in 13 years. I mean, and there have been smaller books that have come out, like smaller anthologies that Latino lesbians have been publishing. It's just right now, how do we reach that? Yeah. I think you're right.
Well, in the Dominican community, I don't know if you know about Jacqueline Polanco's anthology, and that was back in 2007, but it started like a little movement that, Ana Marie Lara also has been a part of it, and she's written stuff, but it's everything in the last like 5, not more than 10 years. I remember meeting Loisa Maritza Perez years ago.
I did an interview with her and I have her book.
I have her book but no, she doesn't self-identify, but it's in there. So there is people in the closet and people who identify as Latino queer. But I don't think there is a movement. I don't think we are, especially the lesbians, we are not, working as a collectively. I guess because we have not been around or we're not exposed. Like I'm doing something in Washington Heights, you were doing something downtown. We're not connected.
But my reading was more mainstream, so it didn't necessarily gear itself towards the queer community. I think my point was sort of bringing up issues of visibility in terms of, like, we're doing it, but how does that visibility necessarily work?
I wonder how much of it is geographic, because off the top of my head, I mean, Cherie Moraga's in California. I mean, all of these Chicana lesbian feminists are in California, that they're doing their work and they're publishing and all that stuff. In New York, I don't think that there's anything comparative as far as Latino lesbians is going on, so it does become, how do you reach that balance of even just like bi-coastally, right?
I think also when we think of like the East Coast, if we're looking about sort of a predominant lesbian community, you have a lot that goes on in Brooklyn, but the focus of the readings and the focus of the work, the cultural productions that come out are very like a broader diasporic understanding as opposed to something like, let's do something Latino, like, let's do something that's people of color. Like, let's open up the dialogue, it's a lot bigger, for fear of it being like sort of too myopic.
Well, that's a good point. I want to talk more about that in a moment, because I think there's a couple of things. And I also want to, like, short-term memory is a crazy thing. I started this out saying that Sarah Chin asked me to do it, but it was actually Tom Saddle who's here. Was originally sent me the email. I did a lot of interaction with Sarah Chin toward the end, but it was really Tom Saddle, who I know he's a visual artist, and with the Les Dillon Gallery, he used to draw my partner Arthur 10,000 years ago. But that's how this panel got together. So I may have a question for you later. But yeah, I think that's an interesting thing, because even in putting together this panel, like, I could have gotten like guys in moments, right? I mean, Jimmy was here, Jimmy Land popped in a few minutes ago. I can go to the Machinamani Posta. We have a group that I email all the guys, and in moments, like, they can say, yes, I can come, I can't come. You know, Brandon, there's a lot of guys I can pick from. You know, for women, it was tougher, because also Sarah said if they were published, it's, you know, see if they're published, and that adds another layer, right? Because there's that. And your question about, yeah, it is interesting, because when I met with Steve Berman, who originally for this, he said, I want a book that's physically that's focusing on men, because I think I could sell it. That was his rationale. I think I could sell it, and then I'd like to do a woman one after the men one, you know, kind of like as a companion to it. But the woman book wasn't the leader, and as at this point, it hasn't materialized, right? So that's an important thing.
Let's not forget compañeras.
Right.
You know, so it you know, it's not that there's not, you know, unless
Carla's book,
yeah.
right.
You're talking about Juanita Ramos.
Yeah, Juanita Ramos.
Yeah, I mean, that was back in the 70s when it
70s.
started. You know, I was part of that. Way back in, I mean, 76 when we started talking about it. And there's Tatiana de la Tierra. You know, she's been around. She's not well, by the way. But, you know, she's published a whole bunch of things. Her thing is mostly erotica, and she's an amazing writer. So, you know, look around.
I think it also, like, the stuff that earlier emerged, and like we bring up like Shady a lot of these texts were like a reaction to the, like you said before, to very much second wave feminism. And now that we've reached this point, it's like, okay, well, if we're not going to put it as a guise that it's going to be sort of contesting the ideology of a very conservative feminist agenda, then what would we have to write about? It's just going to write about lesbians. Right.
Well, that was the thing about Sharia Moore. I mean, Gloria Anzaldúa, I mean, her work evolved over her, and I was just reading an article recently about the fact that everybody focuses on borderlands, but they don't go beyond borderlands to look at like different. I mean, it was interesting because I was reading this and like I was sitting on the train. I just blew my mind that I think it was partly because I was reading her and I hadn't realized it. But a lot of my stuff talks about Nepantla, and it's this in between space that is very painful, but also is like a place from which like there is the opportunity for growth. You know, and that's one of the things that she was writing about that gets overlooked. You know, a lot of different things she was writing about gets overlooked, and when we focus only on borderlands. But I mean, their whole motivation to go against the Chicano movement also, you know, and so yeah, I think that's part of the reason that they were writing also. So I guess he wants to say something.
That's true.
It's just a comment. Maybe it's a question to you. I think your question was very specific, right? And I think that maybe I would have rendered like besides the usual male-dominated thing like that. That is like everybody dancing around it and nobody brings it up.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but there's a lot of that in your question. So I want to ask you, as you were working the question, maybe also you have some suggestions, because the answers I hear seem to be more directed as more women anthologies, more lesbian, Latino anthologies, which kind of like, and I think that maybe what you were saying is more co-gender participation in this kind of anthologies. I think that's what you were advocating.
Yeah, I'm up for.
So why are we discussing more apartheid and not more work together? So, and I want to put that out there, and that's kind of lacking from the conversation. What were you thinking when you asked?
A lot of what you're saying there, sort of, how do we sort of bridge that sort of divide and make it something where it could be sort of an anthology that includes both, an anthology that sort of incorporates a lot of different voices, and sort of along the broad spectrum of gender and sexuality in a way that sort of addresses contemporary identity issues. Doing that, but while at the same time not disallowing for something that is, let's do a contemporary sort of lesbian voice and see what that means, and see what that means to do like something that is very contemporary that sees these issues into like how do we start building those coalitions? I guess is
So you're almost saying both,
yes.
right? I mean, I think.
I was just gonna say, this is a good example of how you build, right here.
Well, there's two things, and then I think that might be a good segue to talk a little bit about publishing, because I think Charlie, Erasmo, we've always talked about trying to do this. So I just said this, I did Latino Queer Writers Collective, and we got a table. Now we have a spot, right? But that'll exist today, it'll transform. We've talked about calling it the Lorca Society, but that doesn't really include women, right? Because the Lorca's
Call
guy.
it living la vida Lorca.
Living la vida Lorca. So we've been thinking about this. This is something that we.
¿Qué es
So,
Lorca?
say it again?
¿Qué es Lorca?
Lorca.
Oh, okay. Oh.
So it's something that we're thinking about. I think we're grappling. How do we do this? How do we create this space for ourselves? For all of us. And I think one of the things that Charlie has said a little earlier, and related to what we were talking about, is that part of like the history of the feminist press and feminist movements, the feminist press movement was that they're not opening the doors for us. So we have to like open the doors ourselves and create our own presses and find our own.
Just like today.
Yes, right. They weren't opening this door for us. But so they're not. So we kind of started publishing their own work, and then also creating the systems to get the work out there. And so I think maybe for Charlie and for us, maybe we can talk a little bit about our own experiences publishing or trying to get published or hopes to get published. And then specifically for Charlie, because Charlie he said what he's focusing on these days is publishing.
Yeah.
So to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Before I self-published my first book in 2004, I was trying to get published conventionally as an emerging writer. And I had one friend who had been published in Portland. He was a gay erotica writer. He said to me, look, I've had several things published. If you want to get published and you're not in New York or some publishing mecca, I was in Portland, Oregon at the time. Send your stuff into erotica anthologies. They have open calls for submissions, and they're always looking for new writers. This was back in 2003. So I thought, okay, I've never written an erotica story, but I was writing an erotic novel. So what I did was I extracted a scene from the novel and just created this small story, but I didn't think it would get published. I basically sent to this anthology, which I'm not going to name, a Latino erotica story and a non-specific, just gay erotica story. Because they were accepting more than one submission, and they didn't take the Latino one, they took the non-specific one. So I thought, okay, at least I've got a foot in the door here, but my immediate Latino voice wasn't accepted. So then I self-published my first novel. It was like 150 copies. I was basically, doing the DIY, selling them wherever I could, hustling them to friends, just to start getting feedback on my writing, because I had spent years and years just sitting in my room and writing and reading and studying. I don't have I didn't finish college or anything like that. I'm mostly self-educated. Then it became an obsession. Then I started publishing. I had about 5 erotica stories published. But then I stopped doing that because I didn't want to get pigeonholed as a Latino erotica writer. It was starting to go that way. So I ditched that, and then all of this stuff started happening, and I thought, okay, now that I've worked with some editors and I have a little bit of experience in getting published, I want to start pursuing publishing projects, whether I decide to spearhead them or whether I'm just a contributor. And it's gone that way because, all of this is important. Going and doing the readings is important. Promoting your books, all of that is important. But when we're all gone, it's our work that will be left behind. And I don't mean that from an egocentric point of view, but who knows if things are going to get better? We don't know where things are going to go with the way the world is going. There's going to be some kid